For today's talk, cultural difference and how to turn it into cultural intelligence, the objective is understand the key cultural differences, elements that have an impact on your career path. Think as a specialist. Learn strategies to succeed in your job search and career development. And I will now hand it over to Dr. Lionel. I will let him introduce himself. He has lots of wisdom, lots of great experience that he will be kindly sharing with us today. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Dr. Lionel. Thanks. The floor is yours. I will stop sharing my screen. Oh, okay, you got it.
Sorry, yes, thank you. Sorry, Ahmed. It's like kind of jumped the gun. Oh, I'm just realizing, wait a minute, anyway. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to talk to everyone about cultural differences and the impact they have on people's job search. And I want to start with something that illustrates kind of the fundamental issue that we're all facing in this when we're looking for work. So I'm going to use the example of introducing myself as a presenter or as a workshop facilitator around the world, because I've done this on many occasions. Okay, so I hope everybody you can all see the slides, right? Yes. Okay. Perfect. Because with all these screens, I'm getting confused as to what people are seeing. So I've introduced myself around the world, and what I've found is the goal remains the same. As a presenter, my goal is to establish credibility. Well, another goal is to establish a connection with the audience, but first and foremost, I need to establish credibility. So the goal is the same. What changes, depending on where I introduce myself around the world, is what I need to say about myself in order to establish that credibility. And I'll use concrete examples of 4 different countries where I have introduced myself on many occasions, and I have been introduced by other people to illustrate the difference. So if I say this, so the 4 countries I will use as examples will be Canada, the United States, France, and China, because these are 4 countries I've worked with extensively. So this is true. I have more than 20 years of experience delivering presentations, facilitating workshops in 20 countries. I can tell you that when I say this to Canadian audiences, they all look at me like with a bit of a shrug of the shoulder and say, so? Because that does not register, okay? It does not establish my credibility. On the other hand, if I say this, okay, which is also true, okay? I have worked with many immigrant servicing agencies. I've worked with IEPs directly one-on-one, but I've coached and trained a lot of the job search counselors so that they can help IEPs find jobs, okay? And that, in my experience, resonates far more in Canada than the first bullet point. Because in Canada, what works really well is I've worked with people like you who are trying to solve the same kind of problem in the same kind of context. That really resonates. Now, if I say any of the these 2 bullet points in France or in the US, everybody looks at me like, big deal. Okay? On the other hand, in France, if I say this, I've got it made. I am a graduate of the École Polytechnique de Paris. In France, that means the world. It is the equivalent of graduating from Tsinghua University in China, the University of Tokyo in Japan, the Indian Institute of Technology in India. The closest thing in North America would probably be Harvard, but even that doesn't quite do it justice. Okay, I'm not trying to impress you by saying this. I'm just trying to give you an idea that in France, this means the world. And I remember one person in France, when I was discussing this, she said, oh yeah, I noticed you graduated from that university. I figured it will be interesting. She had no idea what I was going to discuss, but she thought it would be interesting. Okay. Now, what kind of reaction do you think I get in Canada or in the US when I tell people I graduated from the École Polytechnique de Paris? Well, I can tell you because I've done it on a number of occasions, and the reaction I get is, good for you. In other words, people have absolutely no idea what it means. And again, I'm not blaming them. Okay, they haven't heard of it, and there's not that many graduates, and not that many come to Canada. But the point is, it does not give me the kind of reaction in Canada that it gets me in France. In the US, this gets me some mileage, but way better is I have a PhD from Caltech. And Caltech has two very important characteristics by American standards. One, it's American. And I'm sure you all know that graduating from an American university gives you more mileage than graduating from a non-American university in the US. The other one is it's a recognized American university, because in the US you have plenty of universities that are not recognized. Trump University comes to mind. When I work with Chinese organizations, a PhD from Caltech gets me some recognition, but way better is this. I wrote 3 books, and that for Chinese audiences means the world. Okay. Plus, I was married to a Chinese lady for 10 years. So I can tell you that the combination of these two things gave me a lot of credibility with Chinese audiences. So I hope that everybody understands the point I'm trying to make here. Okay. We have the same goal as we would have back home. In your case, it's you want to get a job. That doesn't change. What changes is how do you achieve that goal? And what I want to discuss today with you is the fact that, well, you will need to change the way you go about it, okay? Because the way you go about looking for a job in Canada is going to be different from the way you look for a job in France, in Brazil, in China, in the UK, wherever you go, okay? It's specific to each country. So this is what I would like everybody to remember. The other thing, I would like everybody, I forgot to include the numbers. Okay, so I'd like all of you to think about what kind of managers do you prefer. So we have a scale at the bottom, okay? So I'm going to ask all of you in a minute, please hang on, okay? Please hold off answering my question at this point, okay? I'm going to ask all of you to decide what kind of manager do you prefer. So I work with a lot of data-driven people, okay? IT specialists, engineers, accountants, pharmacists, people like that. People for whom, like, if you put a number on it, it means a heck of a lot more than if you don't. Okay, so I'm going to try and put a number on cultural differences. So here I'm going to ask you to decide what kind of manager do you prefer. So we have a scale going, so I'll number the positions from left to right, 1 to 10. So 1 will be the position all the way on the left. Then it will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and obviously 10 will be all the way on the right. Okay? So let me explain the scale. Position 1 will be people who love freedom. Okay? When you like to work for a manager who tells you go west, and that's all they tell you. You're going to figure out the rest. Position 10 means you want very clear instructions. We are driving to San Diego. It's going to take us 5 days if you're starting from Ontario. Okay? You're going to have to cross the border. Actually, well, maybe can you actually cross the border driving? Okay, do we need to fly? Do we need a vaccine before we go? Do we need to quarantine before we go? What do we need to do in order to be able to get to San Diego? Okay, and how do you make that happen? All right. So we've got 10 positions. I'd like all of you to tell me what kind of, by putting a number in the chat box, what kind of manager do you personally prefer? Okay. So as I said, we have a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. I want you to enter a number that corresponds to the kind of manager you personally prefer. All right. Go ahead. So Maya says 3, Regis says 3, Mauricio 6. Keep going. Okay, we have Priscilla 4, Regis 6, Thomas 5, 5. Any other answers? All right. So we have a number of we have numbers like 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So in other words, we have people primarily around here. All right. So Eduardo says 7. So I have done the same thing around the world, and I've collected the answers. In order to make sure that I'm comparing apples to apples, all the respondents that I used to create this chart do the same job. They're all accounting professionals working for the big four accounting firms. So big four means PwC, Ernst & Young, KPMG, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm sorry, KPMG, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young. That's the one I'm missing. Okay. So what I've plotted here are the normalized distributions of answers that I've obtained from professionals, from accounting professionals of various countries. Going from left to right, we have Canada, CA, UK obviously is the United Kingdom, IN is India, ZA is South Africa, PH is Philippines, MX Mexico, PK Pakistan. So I'm going to make 2 points with this chart. First one is you cannot judge a book by its cover. Not all Canadians want the same kind of manager. Not all Indians want the same kind of manager. Not all Pakistanis want the same kind of manager. Okay. In every culture, in every group, we have a wide range of opinions, as you can see. All right. So and one way to remember this chart is culture is the average, personality is the standard deviation. You can see that there's overlap. Not every Canadian wants more freedom than every Filipino. But at the same time, we can say that on average, and those two words are critical, on average, Canadians like more freedom than Filipinos. See the difference between the group and the individual. This is a really important difference in my experience. At the same time, it's obvious that on average, Filipinos, Mexicans, and Pakistanis expect clearer directions from their managers than Canadians or Brits. And we tend to manage the way we like to be managed. So what does it mean? Well, the average Filipino, Mexican, or Pakistani employee expects clearer directions from his or her manager than the average Canadian or British manager expects to give to his or her employees. So if an employee is on the right and the manager is on the left, what does it mean? Well, very likely the manager is going to be perceived, the employee is going to be perceived by the manager as lacking initiative, does not work independently, needs excessive handholding. And this is the kind of comments we see on performance appraisal of recent immigrants all the time. Why does it matter so much? Most immigrants who come to Canada today come from cultures that are significantly more hierarchical than Canada is. Generally speaking, where do we come from? Okay, well, we come from Asia, Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe. All these parts of the world relative to Canada are significantly more hierarchical than Canada is. Okay, and I come from France. Okay, France is significantly more hierarchical than Canada is. And where that shows up is during the job interview process, because the challenge we run into is, are we perceived by the recruiters as taking initiative? And the challenge is, on many occasions during the job interview process, we can be perceived as asking for too much clarification. We're not thinking independently or something like this. Okay. Now, how do we perceive? How does the average immigrant who just arrived in their first job perceive his or her manager, the average Canadian manager? Well, on average, we tend to perceive our managers as not giving good direction. Okay. They kind of let us flounder. Every time I go to my manager, I ask a question, I get an answer like, I don't know, you figure it out. It's like, well, how did this person get promoted? That's our reaction. Okay. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from the way we were brought up. And one of the things I want to encourage all of you on the call, like if you're looking for a job, that means you probably have a bit of time, then I want to encourage you to go spend one day in a high school in Canada. Try to find a way of going, right, with the pandemic, it's a little bit difficult, okay? But try to spend a day at some point, in some form of activity, whether it's soccer practice or whatever, okay? To get a sense for how do adults lead children, teenagers in particular, in Canada, and compare that with the way it's done in your home country. And I can promise you, you will be surprised. I can tell you, I was really surprised when I first went to the first time I went to spend a day in a high school. It was in the U.S. I remember like spending an hour in a chemistry class, and I was thinking like, this guy's not teaching. Like, he was just doing experiments, showing to all the kids like something's happening, and then he would ask them, "What do you think happened?" Like, and that was it. That was the class. The kids were not even facing the teacher; they were facing one another. They were like in pods, and it was just like it seemed like first of all a complete zoo as far as I'm concerned. No respect for the teacher, and really the teacher was not teaching. Okay, so it was very very different, and this is what people learn. So as a result, when they get to the workplace, they have totally different expectations of the relationship between manager and employee. And that will show up during the job interview. So the biggest challenge I find when people come to Canada, and I mean, I run into that problem certainly, is do we think like generalists or do we think like specialists? Most of us coming from hierarchical cultures have learned to think like generalists. Okay. Back home, we will describe our experience as broad. And I'll give you very concrete examples because I've heard them from specific individuals. I remember this one guy from Iran, he told me, I'm a civil engineer, I can build anything. I remember an architect from India, he said, I'm an architect, I can design any kind of building. I remember an IT specialist, can't remember which part of the world he was from, but he told me, I'm an IT specialist, I can do anything with computers. What was the other one? Yeah, well, anyway, you get the gist of it. Yeah. And this is the challenge. And anyway, it's true. I mean, what ends up happening back home is the percentage of people who have a high level of formal education is more limited. As a result, if you have a bachelor or more of education, you probably end up being moved from one area to another. And what is really important to your success is the ability to pick up a new area very quickly. And so what we emphasize continuously during our job interviews is I can learn. The trouble is Canada doesn't work that way. Canada is a land of specialists. Okay. If you look at, so I'll give you a very concrete example. I compared the content of mechanical engineering programs in Canada, France, India, and Mexico, and the US. Okay. And the part which is really striking is that in France, India, and Mexico, in other words, in hierarchical cultures, if you're a good student, you will be encouraged to take as broad a range of courses as possible. Okay, so polytechnical means like you study a wide range of subjects fundamentally. The same is true for Tecnológico de Monterrey. The same is true for Indian Institute of Technology. People, if you're a good student, you are encouraged, and the system encourages you to study as wide a range of topics as possible. In egalitarian cultures like Canada and the US, it works the opposite way. The better the student, the more he or she is encouraged to specialize. And so, for example, if you compare what you have to do to get a bachelor with honors to a regular bachelor, you'll see that, yes, one, you need higher grades on average, but more importantly, you need a higher percentage of your courses in your field. So, for example, to get a bachelor, and I don't remember the exact number, but let's say to get a bachelor in mechanical engineering, you need 80% of your courses in mechanical engineering, in engineering in particular, mechanical. If you want to get a bachelor with honors in mechanical engineering, you're probably going to need to take 90% of your courses in mechanical engineering or engineering more broadly. Okay, so in Canada, the better the student, the more specialized you're encouraged to be. And that really shows up during job interviews because many immigrant candidates will try, their resume screams, I can do everything. Okay, I'm going to encourage you to look at your resume and look at, in particular, what you have at the very top. Do you have an objective? And if so, does the objective say something along the lines of I want to work for like a good company. I want to contribute to the best of my ability. Something completely generic. All right. Well, that's being a generalist. Okay? What people really care about is what problem are you good at solving? And this is what you want to be emphasizing over and over again through your resume, but also during the job interview. So it takes a little bit of work to identify that, because for most people, I mean, most immigrants in my experience, when I ask them, what problem are you good at solving? The kind of answers I get is, well, we didn't have problems. Okay, well, that doesn't answer my question. And it certainly doesn't answer the question of the average Canadian. I've also get people like, I'm an engineer, I can solve any kind of technical problem. Okay, that doesn't narrow it down either. Okay, so I want to encourage you to be able to answer that question. What problem are you good at solving? This is a critical question because fundamentally that's what will get you hired. The way you will get a job is not because like people often use the word employers to refer to organizations. Employer, in my experience, is a misnomer because it would imply that the goal of these organizations is to employ people. Employing people is not their goal. They employ people as a way to solve problems. If the solution to that problem is to hire someone who knows how to solve that kind of problem, great, they will hire that person. If the solution to the problem is buying a piece of software or a machine or whatever it is, then they will choose that option. Employment is not the obvious answer to the solution of the problem. So the question becomes, what problem are you good at solving? Okay. So what I have found is I've worked with many people, and I know that most immigrants, when you ask them what problem are you good at solving, are completely lost. So they need a little bit of help. So I'm going to suggest the following thing. I'm going to suggest that you think of all the projects you've worked on throughout your studies, your work experience, even extracurricular activities. And you describe them like this. You give them a title, you have a situation, you describe the situation, 1 or 2 sentences. The problem might be a paragraph, the approach might be, I don't know, a page, and the results will be maybe a couple of paragraphs. Okay? So at least 80% of the words you use to describe that project should be in the approach. And the idea is doing this will, I mean, depending on the number of years of experience, but it will take you anywhere between a few days and a few weeks. And I know for many people, this feels like a complete waste of time because I need a job. So if I'm not sending resumes, I'm not going to get a job. But the point is, the probability of you getting a job once you are brought in for a job interview, first of all, the probability of you being called for an interview, and then the probability of you getting the job if you are called will be way higher if you have done this work, which will lead you to, one, be able to describe all the work you've done in the past in a way that flows freely during a job interview. In particular, you will have searched all the technical words in English, yeah, or in French if you're in Quebec. And the other one is you will have the biggest thing is finding the pattern. The pattern is what you're really good at. Because in my experience, most people have really solved the same kind of problem over and over again. They just solved it in different contexts. And so you want to identify what is that skill that you're really good at and be able to describe it clearly. If the skill you're really good at, the kind of problems you really know how to solve, is the kind of problem that the organization is trying to solve, trust me, you will have a job. Okay. And that's part of the 6 months that it takes the average immigrant to get a job. It's learning to describe the work you've done back home in a way that Canadians understand. Or I should say, the same way that someone born and raised in Canada would describe this work if he or she had done exactly the same thing. Okay? So I'm going to move on to another area because in my experience, this is really another major deal, a breaker when it comes to immigrants looking for work. It's the relative importance of technical skills and soft skills. So let me explain what I mean by that. Technical skills, I think, is usually very obvious. If you're an engineer, well, your ability to do calculations. If you're an accountant, your ability to calculate taxes. If you're an IT specialist, your knowledge of programming languages, whatever. Soft skills, what do I mean by that? So soft skills, I will define soft skills as the combination of 3 sets of skills. First one is your ability to manage relationships. So your ability to work with other people, okay? That will include communication, leadership, negotiation, conflict resolution, teamwork, presentation, the whole 9 yards. Another set of skills that I'm going to lump into soft skills is your ability to manage yourself. What do we need to manage about ourselves in the workplace? Well, we need to manage our emotions. We need to manage our motivation. That is really important during a job search. We need to manage our time. We need to manage our energy level. That's what cookies and coffee are for in the afternoon. We need to manage, what else? Well, our resources, money, for example. Okay, so all these things we manage actively or like consciously or subconsciously, but we manage. And the third set of skills that I'm going to lump into soft skills is your ability to manage the system. So for example, when you were a student in university, and you wanted to take a course that was not part of your program, how did you go about it? Well, some people are much better at this game than others, okay? Now, I'm sure you've all noticed technical skills and soft skills are independent variables in the mathematical sense of the word. What I mean by that is somebody can have great technical skills without having good soft skills, and vice versa. Okay, you have people who have great soft skills and cannot turn their computer on. Now, how do Canadian organizations classify their people, categorize them? Well, usually they're going to do this: low, medium, high on each axis. Okay. Now, where do you think the average immigrant is going to end up on this diagram when he or she arrives in Canada? So if you can put it as, high, low, starting with technical skills and then soft skills in the chat box. Okay, where do immigrants show up on this chart when they first arrive in Canada? Anyone?
High in technical skills, but really low on the soft skills side.
High, low, yes. So high tech and low soft. Yes, that's exactly it. Okay. Pretty much when we arrive, we all end up in the top left corner. Why do we have high technical skills? Well, that's because of the point system of Citizenship and Immigration Canada, or IRCC as it's called now. Okay. To be allowed to come to Canada, you need enough points, and you all know how many points are allocated to education. So as a result, it's pretty much impossible to get to Canada without having high technical skills. Now, there's one important implicit statement in there. Here, this is probably where it's the only time where being so far north is in our favor. It is, Canada is pretty much in the G7, among developed countries, pretty much the only one that has complete control of its immigration policy. It's not entirely true. New Zealand does have that control as well. Japan as well, because they're islands, okay? Western Europe certainly doesn't have it, okay? Australia, you can debate. I mean, they're fairly close to Indonesia, and so as a result, and a number of islands in the Pacific, so they end up with a number of people emigrating from those countries illegally. Okay, this is the key point, okay? Canada is very far from all the countries where immigrants come from. So as a result, the percentage of people who get to Canada illegally as a percentage of the total number of immigrants is very small, okay? Just to quantify it, it's estimated there are between 10 and 15 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. Now, we have 10% of their population. So if we had the same ratio per capita, we would have between 1 and 1.5 million illegal immigrants in Canada. It's estimated, obviously all these numbers are estimates, we have between 40 and 100,000 illegal immigrants in Canada. In other words, 10 to 20 times less per capita. What difference does it make? Well, it makes a world of difference. Because when the average Canadian meets the average immigrant, the average Canadian assumes you're here legally and you have skills. What assumptions does the average American make when meeting the average Mexican? Not nearly as positive, okay? You're here illegally and you have no skills, is usually the assumption. So in Canada, immigrants have high technical skills, but that's because that's pretty much the only way to get here. Now, why do we have poor soft skills? Well, it's not because we are a pain in the neck. It's because soft skills are measured by cultural standards. There is no point in our point system allocated to soft skills. As a result, some immigrants come to Canada with great soft skills by their home country standards. Some come to Canada with average soft skills by their home country standards. And some come to Canada with poor soft skills by their home country standards. I can tell you I worked with a Ukrainian software engineer whose soft skills were so bad, he managed to get himself fired before the end of his probation period. Okay, you have to do something drastic for that to happen, but he did. Okay, like he was fired before the end of his probation period. The point is this: no matter where an immigrant is on the soft skill scale by his or her home country standards, when he or she arrives in Canada, by which country standards will his or her soft skills be measured? Canadian standards, okay? And I don't want to imply they're higher or lower, they're just different, okay? I'll take my own example. I grew up in France. I was considered as having high soft skills by French standards. I was the captain of the rowing team in my university. I was the maître d' in a restaurant. And I was one of the two people who started the first career fair in that same university, the École Polytechnique de Paris. Okay, at the time there were career fairs in other universities, but not ours. And a buddy of mine and I visited a career fair in another university. We said, we got to make that happen at our place. We did. And 36 years ago, they still run it every year, like as an annual event. So all situations that clearly require high soft skills. But when I arrived in Canada, I can tell you my soft skills went overnight from high to low. I did not change overnight. What changed overnight was the criteria that the people around me were using to measure my soft skills. If you've worked with someone from France, you probably know why. It's when I gave negative feedback. French negative feedback is blasting by Canadian standards, where the average Canadian will tell you, oh, it's a good report. You may want to look at section 3 some more, but overall good work. I said, redo section 3, it's wrong. It's the same message. You have to work on section 3 more, but I delivered it so differently that when I was at Procter & Gamble, no technician wanted to report to me. I wish I was kidding. So the crux of the matter is this. What are the relative weights that we place on technical skills and soft skills? Well, in Canada, I can tell you this, okay? If I do the average of all professional jobs, by professional jobs, I mean any job that requires a university or college degree to do the job, okay? The relative weights will depend on your job, okay? Some jobs are more technical than others, but if I do the average of all professional jobs, I get 50-50. In Canada, we tend to weigh technical skills and soft skills approximately equally. Now, there's another important point. As you move up in the organization in Canada, the weight placed on soft skills keeps increasing. It's very, very striking when you get to partner level in consulting firms. To become a partner, the number one thing you need is client relationship management skills. Client relationship management includes selling projects, but it's more than selling, okay? But the point is, you need, now of course you need to deliver the projects when you've sold them, but you need to sell them, you need to manage them, you need to make sure the client is happy at every point of the way, okay? And that is definitely a soft skill. Now with 50-50, lines of equal value in Canada are diagonal. What I mean by that is everybody along this line brings the same value as the person in the top left corner. And that line is diagonal because the weights on technical skills and soft skills being equal, if I lose 1 point on the technical skill scale, I can compensate by adding a point on the soft skill scale. -1 + 1 cancels. The challenge, what is the situation in our home countries? Well, remember I said most of us come from countries that are significantly more hierarchical than Canada is. And in those countries, in our home countries, the relative weights will be, I won't quibble you if you were thinking 80-20, okay? But the point is, there was way more emphasis on technical skills back home than there is in Canada, okay? I mean, you can see it in the importance of which university we got our degree from. You can also see it in what it takes to be a manager. Back home, you need good technical skills. You don't need soft skills. People will do what you want as a manager because you're the manager. That's reason enough. One soft skill, when the difference is absolutely striking, is making good presentations. You can measure the importance of a soft skill in a culture by looking at the age at which kids start learning that soft skill. So think about it this way. At what age did you make your first public presentation? Anyone?
For me, I did it when I was graduating.
Graduating, Ahmed? Yes.
In my project for graduation.
That's it. Okay.
No,
So
I did very
That's the
young,
year.
like high school, like the small
High
presentations
school?
papers. Yeah, small presentations paper that we just cut and paste. Yeah.
So Mariana, by Canadian standards, high school is very old to start your presentation. Do you know at what age Canadian kids start their first public presentation? At what age does the average Canadian kid make his or her first public presentation? Anyone?
I believe with the show and tell at the school.
That's it. Show and tell in kindergarten. You are 3 or 4 years old when you make that first public presentation. And you keep making presentations throughout your studies. Okay. In my case, I grew up in France. My first public presentation was in grade 9. I stood in front of the class before, but I recited things by heart. I mean, I recited Molière's plays, poems, and multiplication table. The first time I had to choose a subject, do the research, and prepare the presentation, then present, was grade 9. I told you I was married to a Chinese lady for 10 years. Her first public presentation was like Ahmed's presentation. It's defending her undergraduate thesis. In other words, she was 22 by the time she presented for the first time. Now, like me, she has stood in front of the class before, but it was the first time she had to choose a subject, prepare the presentation, and present. Okay? Is everybody with me on this? And I can tell you, I mean, my kids went through school in Canada, and there was one time when it really struck me. My son was in grade 11. He took a chemistry class, and the final, the summative project, as they called it, was creating a portfolio for a famous chemist. And I was looking at him doing this, and I was thinking, like, how much chemistry is my son learning? My thought was zip, okay? But I also realized that is not what the system is emphasizing here, okay? Is everybody with me on this? Okay, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. Okay, like that's not my goal. I'm sure you all understand. My goal is just to explain how the system works. All right.
Yeah.
So
no, you're making a point, Lionel. Maybe if you want to open up a little bit, if anyone wants to share their feedback.
Absolutely. If people have questions or comments, this is a good time. Okay.
Mike, do you want to share from your end? Amanda.
No, I'm good. Like in terms of yes, the way people perceive their technical skills as opposed to their soft skills, it really weighs heavier, of course, in Canada than I'm sure everywhere else. You can see it. I see it in IT where a lot of the everything is stressed about. How strong are you in that technology? Whether you're a business analyst or whether you're a network engineer or software developer. And the great thing is when you say, what problem are you good at solving is a great question, because that's some of the questions that we ask, that I've sat in some interviews and watched some technical people ask, candidates, what problems are you good at solving? Give me a situation where there was an issue or a problem, and how did you resolve that? What did you do? What was your method or train of thought or your process? And they would go about that. That was a very good one. So.
Thank you, Mike.
Other questions or comments? Please go ahead. Like,
I think we're good. You can carry
good?
on.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, so with 90-10, lines of now, or I want to emphasize one thing, okay? The difference in technical skills is real, okay? It's very common. I mean, I know when I work with, I'll give you a very concrete example. I remember getting a mortgage in at one of the big banks, okay? So as I told you, I was married to a Chinese lady. I lived in Markham, okay, and so very an area full of Chinese. The branch where I got the mortgage was pretty much all Chinese staff. I remember one of the ladies that I talked to about a mortgage. You know, we're kind of discussing rates, whatever. And at one point she goes, "Well, it's going to be, I don't know, 56 plus 79." Okay. And I did the math in my head and I told her the answer. Okay. So 56, 79, that'd be what? 125. And she turned to me and she said, "You didn't grow up here." And I said, "No, how do you know?" And she said, "Canadians cannot add 56 and 79 without getting their cell phones or writing it down on a piece of paper." And I've tried it. Okay. I've tried it with my kids. And that's it. She's absolutely right. Okay, my two kids had to get their cell phones to add 56 and 79. All right. So there is definitely a difference. Okay. The trouble is in Canada, once you have good enough technical skills, okay, that you don't get many additional points for getting more technical skills. You need to move on the soft skill side. Okay. So if I go back to this, with 90-10, lines of equal value in our home countries will be almost flat. Now, if I lose 1 unit on the technical skill scale, I need 9 more units on the soft skill scale to compensate. Okay. Is everybody with me up to this point?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So this is the reason why we get so frustrated. Okay. It looks like this. Candidate A, recent immigrant, is competing for a job or a promotion with candidate B. And candidate B is somebody born and raised in Canada or an immigrant who's been in Canada much longer than candidate A. Okay? Now, if A and B are competing for the same job or the same promotion, who gets it?
B.
So the full answer is it depends on what criteria the people who make the evaluation use to make the determination of who's better. Okay. By Canadian standards, it's very clear that B will bring more value than A. So as a result, in most organizations in Canada, B will be preferred to A. How will A interpret the situation?
Discrimination.
Yes. It's unfair, it's discrimination. Okay. Why? Because by my standards, I bring more value than B. Okay. And I can tell you, I experienced it personally at Procter & Gamble. Okay. In my case, it was a promotion as opposed to a recruitment, but it's exactly what happened to me. Okay. I told you I have a PhD. I was competing with a guy for a promotion. This guy, his first name, let's call him Joe. Joe has a bachelor. I have a PhD. Okay. Now, remember the way I was giving negative feedback? I'm blasting all the technicians with negative feedback. He's quite popular. What do you think happened? Joe got the promotion. Not only that, they made him my boss. Now, that was adding insult to injury as far as I was concerned. Okay? Now, I had good enough technical skills that I could make sure my area was taken care of and let things fall apart in other areas that were under his jurisdiction, but not mine. Okay? Guess how our management looked at it? Well, good thing Lionel, we didn't promote Lionel because he's not a good team player.
Yeah.
So this is really a major challenge. I really want to encourage people to understand how is your performance measured during a job interview, but also on the job afterwards. And recognize that the way your performance would have been evaluated back home is quite different from the way it's going to be evaluated here. And if you don't understand that, you'll run into a lot of difficulties in my experience.
Yeah. If you don't mind, maybe some folks maybe want to chime in here, ask questions.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So, Amr,
Yeah.
I see you wanted to speak, or Ahmed, or
anyone?
Yeah, you had some questions. Amanda, go ahead, Amanda.
Sure. Yeah, I just wondered if it'd be possible for you to talk a little bit about some of the examples of the soft skills that you see that are making a big difference. You know, I really appreciate this contrast that you're able to paint for us, and I think it's so important that we get that. Are there any soft skills that you're seeing that are that make a really big difference, that are of the most important to develop right now?
So there's three. Well, there's more than three, and my experience, and unfortunately, people can only work on 3 soft skills at the same time. It's a little bit like when you're in university, the professors will try to encourage you to not take more than 5 courses at the same time. Otherwise, you'll fail all of them because you won't have time to. So it's kind of the same thing. But there's more than 3. So I would say one is learning to think like a specialist. I've already mentioned that one. Okay. And creating a resume that projects the image of a specialist, and interviewing like a specialist. So those are all tied together. Another one is networking the Canadian way. Okay, so I won't have time to get into that one, but learning to network the Canadian way is really critical. Once people are inside an organization, the top 3, I would say the top 4 issues, one is communication. Learning to communicate in a way that works well for coworkers, okay? And on that one, I mean, I can tell you personally, I mean, communication is full of subdivisions within that, okay? I mean, I'll take my own example. I remember it took me about 1.5 years to learn to leave a voicemail that gets me a response. Because when I was back home, like we didn't use voicemail, and all my voicemail messages sounded like, "Hi, it's me, call me back." And guess what? Nobody was calling me back, okay? So it took me 1.5 years to first notice what pattern people were using when they were leaving me a voicemail, and then duplicate that pattern in my own voicemail messages. So the pattern is, "Hi, this is Lionel. I'm calling you because of this. I need this from you. Here's when you can reach me," or "My phone number is this. You can leave me a voicemail," whatever, okay? So in other words, you give people specific information in a specific order, and that will get your response, okay? So communication is one. Another very important one is taking initiative. I already touched upon this one earlier. Teamwork is a big one. Okay, most of us come from cultures that are more collective than Canada, and as a result, our concept of teamwork is quite different from the Canadian concept of teamwork. And the last one is, feedback. Making sure that when you get feedback from your manager or your coworkers, you interpret it the way they mean it. Okay, that is a big deal. So on the very last slide, I'll show you the kind of the link to my YouTube channel. And I've got a whole pile of videos. I will encourage all of you to watch that. If you're looking for a job, I would really encourage to go through the whole channel. There's about 12 hours in total of material. There is no fee. You don't have to watch any advertising to do it. Just watch it, okay? It's not Game of Thrones. You can't binge watch it, that's for sure, okay? But I can promise you it will save you a lot of time down the road, okay?
Thank you.
So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have another question from Amr. If
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Amr, and mute yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the question is about how to present those soft skills in the job interview, especially if like being cooperative, being open to or fast learner or problem solver. So maybe presenting the technical skills could be easier that, maybe to show the information that you have, or maybe some stories that you already did before. But I'm facing some challenges in presenting the soft skills during the job interview. So how could be done?
So generally speaking, people, I mean, particularly if they're interviewing you for an IT position, okay, they will ask you questions about soft skills, but they will ask you a lot of questions about your technical skills. But fundamentally, when you describe your technical skills, they assess your soft skills at that moment. It's how do you describe the kind of problems you were solving before? How did you solve it? What kind of results did you obtain? Fundamentally, I mean, I'm sure many of you have heard the phrase, well, you lack Canadian experience. You lack Canadian experience does not mean you haven't worked in Canada. What it means is you describe the work you've done in a way that doesn't match my expectation as a Canadian. So there is a script of how people tell their stories in Canada. And that script is what I told you earlier: title, situation, problem, action, results. There's many different versions of it, but the fundamentals don't change, okay? Some people call it STAR, situation, trouble, action, result. Some people call it CAR, challenge, action, result. You'll notice there's the same elements roughly. And you really need to learn to tell your stories that way. And you will have Canadian experience.
Yeah, if I can add, Lionel, one thing that I learned, when I started searching for a job, I was saying I'm searching for a job. And then when I spoke to some recruiters and some HR, they told me, are you in the market? Are you in between contracts? And that's how they say they are searching for jobs. So right. They don't say I'm searching for a job. They say I'm in between contracts, or I'm in the market.
Yeah. And remember, you're there to solve a specific problem, okay? And you want everybody to know what problem you're good at solving, because usually that's the way you get a job. I mean, most jobs you will get because, well, at least in my case, that's the way. I mean, I've been self-employed consultant. So while I'm not looking for employment per se, I'm constantly looking for the next project. So you can say I'm looking for work constantly. I may not be looking for a job, but I'm looking for work all the time. And virtually all my work comes to me through referrals. It's somebody I don't know who has a problem. They say, I'm trying to solve this problem. I really don't know how to go about it. Somebody who knows me tells that person, oh, I know exactly how you can solve that problem. Talk to Lionel. Okay? So this is why it's so important to define what problem you're good at solving and tell everybody what problem you're good at solving so that the word gets out. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions or comments on anyone?
I think Mike is more experienced than me in this area, but I look at the interview as a challenge. So the interviewer, this is how I imagine it. The interviewer is looking at me in a tough situation and looking at me, how am I going to behave in a Canadian standard? What is my tone of my tone of voice? How I'm describing, as you explained, Leon, how I'm describing the situation. Am I nervous? Am I shouting, or my voice tone is so high? Am I moving my hand so much? Show that some kind of aggression. All of this body language also indicate your personality, indicate if you are really can work within the team that you're supposed to work with or not. At the end of the day, the hiring manager is looking for someone who can do the job and do it good, but he does not want to get someone who's going to break the team.
Yes.
He's looking for someone to blend in with the personality of the team, the culture of the team. And as I sometimes I tell all the consultants or candidates that go into an interview, pretend you're discussing technology with your friends. Don't be nervous. Don't be shy of making a mistake, but you can correct the mistake. But just you're speaking to friends about technology, and that puts you at ease instead of answering wrong and then trying to expand on it and knowing that it's not the right answer. So just relax, deep breaths, and you're having a good chat with a couple of buddies. That's how it is.
Yeah.
You may become their friends. Who knows?
So if you want to take the selfie, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I guess that will be easier.
If you wanna finish your last slide or so before.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me get back to that.
I'm just warming them up so that they can be ready for the selfie.
Well, yeah, very briefly. So, well, I'll skip this point because I want to get. So, this is what we touched on already. Okay, you like Canadian experience. I'm sure many of you have heard that phrase. Okay, maybe not directly at the end of a job interview, but it's like back home, you're an engineer if you obtain an engineering degree. Fundamentally, in Canada, you're an engineer because other engineers consider you as an engineer. Okay, what is a license? Fundamentally, it's other engineers but consider you as an engineer. And how will they determine whether you're an engineer or not? It's fundamentally, and I'm quoting PEO on this one, okay? They use the duck test. The duck test, D-U-C-K, goes like this. If it quacks like a duck, flies like a duck, and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Okay? So fundamentally, what does it mean applied to engineering? Well, if you think like an engineer, behave like an engineer, and talk like an engineer, you're probably an engineer. And so in other words, if you have soft skills that match the expectations of Canadian engineer, you are an engineer. Okay? So having Canadian experience does not mean having worked in Canada. It means describing your experience the way Canadians do. Okay? So the very last thing I want to show, I'm going to skip this one because I want to get to this. Okay? So there's two, actually, I'm going to show you two things. The top one is my YouTube channel. And I've already mentioned there, you will find a number of videos. Okay? And I would say if you're looking for work in Canada, watch all of them, okay? The other one is, so it's a series of podcasts I did for job search counselors. So you can find, if you go to these both of them, you'll hear a lot of discussions about, well, how immigrants run into difficulties when they're looking for work. Oh, there was some strange noise in the background. And I would say I'm hoping that will help you in your job search. All right. So let me try. I should probably let me cut and paste these two things into the where is it?
Mariana already did the
Mariana did it. Fantastic. Great.
I did put the YouTube channel and we shared at the beginning your deck, but we can share it again and then everyone can open the deck and get the link from there as well.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. So again, thank you, Lionel. This is really awesome. I personally learned a lot. I just want to maybe check if anyone has a follow-up question before we take the selfie and wrap it up today. Yeah, Amr, go ahead, Amr.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed. And the question, Lionel, is that, I think you describe it well here, but is there a procedure that one can do to guarantee that he's doing this duck test? Like,
so there's no procedure that will guarantee 100%. But I can tell you there are things that will definitely increase the probability of you passing that test, okay? One of the biggest thing is, I'll call it rub shoulders with people who do the kind of work you want to get. So for example, if you're an engineer, you want to get a job as an engineer, then network with engineers. Listen to how they talk about their work, okay? So that, and learn to talk about your work the same way they do. Find yourself a cultural mentor, somebody who can tell you, well, no, the way you tell your story doesn't work. You need to give me this piece of detail. Without it, I don't understand the value you brought. And there's all this piece of information. I don't need that. Okay. So somebody who will edit your stories for you and help you make those stories sound like a Canadian story.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and I would agree with Lionel. Mentoring is very, very important in this journey. I personally learned a lot with my mentors at the beginning, and when I started to mentor, I learned from my mentees as well. So it's a really win-win. You could be surprised, but you really learn a lot when you share your experience.
Oh
And
yeah.
Ahmed, yeah, to find those mentors, shall I just ask someone to be my mentor, or how could be done?
I could help you with that, Amr, if you want
Yeah,
offline.
okay, sure.
Okay.
So if you're in Toronto, I know that Triac. Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council has a mentoring program. Okay, that might be an option. Some professional associations run their own mentoring programs. I think OSP does. Okay, Ahmed, I'm sure you know way more resources. Like I'm sure you can help people there. Like these are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, one very simple example. If you just type mentor in your LinkedIn search, and those people who are in your network and they are saying they are mentors, you just connect with them, ask them to mentor you. This is what I used to do sometimes.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Or even sometimes you can just meet a professional and say, I would like to learn more about this profession. Can you mentor me and give me some tips? And then this could be an option too. And just do a quick call, which would be a coffee before the COVID. But now that it's just a virtual call, a virtual coffee, and then meet them and see if they can help you too.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Any other follow-up questions? Anyone? No?
I just want to say thank you, Lionel. And I watched the videos on your YouTube channel. I'm a big fan, and it's always helpful to learn about these cultural differences and how we can adapt. It's so much easier when we understand the big picture, and then we can act on it before we just struggle and just get to close doors and then not knowing how to get from the next step to the next step. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lionel. I really enjoyed it as well.
My pleasure.
Very good. Very, very good.
Okay.